Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge.
Of this information, you know that this started with President Barack Obama on 8 March. They are going for the economic collapse of our nation. Suspended.
Sudanese protesters in Khartoum, many coming by train from various cities. And more than 100 Supreme Court judges also marched demanding for a civilian government to be formed. The judges marched from the Supreme Court to the Ministry of Defense headquarters, where thousands of protesters are camping since April 6th. This is the first time. Meanwhile, 3 generals of the ruling This came after protest leaders and the military council met for talks. On graffiti artists by the government. Artists are once
of freedom of speech with no fear, and army are with us, and we're able to say whatever we.
Tatiana Portela has the detail.
Here in the center of Bogota, where various social, among others, have gathered of Fensuagro. Alberto, what are your demands for the president?
Today we have gathered here to protest against the national plan of development that ignores the campesinos and pretends to build reforms. The main reasons why national strike.
If the president doesn't, what are you going to do?
Here there are more than 25 departments where various social movements for discomfort just to stop. But we also are in defense of the peace agreement that now the government justice.
These are some of the demands that are to the streets for this.
For that report, officers of Chile's Special Police Force have reportedly detained a minor at the University of Follow them. Students are policies regarding, especially the safe classroom policy and the growing privatization of universities. Our correspondent Paola Dragna
book of the school, the privatization of university people without of the student union to talk more about this.
It's the privatization of education and to demand a better system to fund the education sector. 27,000 students had to drop out since they lost their scholarship. The only option is to continue studying, and if that doesn't change, we will continue marching.
Several streets in the capital will remain closed until the demonstration is over. The students are worried that the protest will be repressed. We will keep you updated.
We thank Paola for that report. Indigenous attended a special national indigenous protest enters its second day. Indigenous authorities are there to discuss land rights and the chamber's role in the protection of the environment. They are trying to defend. Session takes place on the sidelines of an annual 3-day-long demonstration known as the Free Land Encampment in Brasilia. Meanwhile, the protest around 2,000 to 3,000 indigenous protesters and their supporters. Various tribes have set up along the avenue mental building on the of riot police. Apart from meeting with members of Congress, protesters also hope to meet with the Supreme Court to push for greater protection of their lands.
There are serious risks of setbacks. The achievements we have achieved with the Constitution of 1988, the demarcation of indigenous lands are paralyzed. FUNAI is dismantled. Several indigenous lands are suffering attacks. There is a campaign of hatred against indigenous people.
And for indigenous tribes, isolation is key to protect their way of life. There are more than 800,000 indigenous people and over 400 demarcated territories across the country for their exclusive use. Access by outsiders is strictly regulated, but President Bolsonaro vowed to take control of their lands and has already stripped the FUNAI Indigenous Affairs Agency of its power to define native land, giving that decision-making power to the Agricultural Ministry. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. 3 days after the government in Argentina announced new measures to control inflation, a sharp devaluation of the peso is spreading alarm. It's also putting in question President Mauricio Macri's chances of re-election. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, explains.
Here in Argentina, President Mauricio Macri is facing a very difficult situation right now, with the economy seemingly out of control. There's a lot of uncertainty and discontent, as the measures announced on Monday have had very little effect on the galloping inflation. This has now been aggravated by the rise in the dollar exchange rate to 47.5 pesos, beating all records since Macri took office and causing speculation in the price of basic goods. Monday's measures were also seen as a part of a political strategy to boost the president's chances of re-election in October, but not even his traditional allies in the banking sector, who have always supported him, seem to be going along with these measures. There's also a lack of confidence abroad, with Argentina's country risk rating climbing to almost 1,000 points. The stock market has fallen 9.8%, and so far the government has not provided any answers or new policies to respond to this very grave situation in the economy.
Controversy continues in Peru after the new revelations regarding the Odebrecht corruption case. Citizens say they are disgusted over the testimony given by the company's former head in the country, Jorge Barata. They say they hope this can force changes in the political system.
Although Peruvians already sense it, now we have certainty. We really know, including the amount of money, and we are all disgusted, frightened of what was happening. But unfortunately, it's a bitter pill that we have to take to be able to learn something from this.
It shows how this company became embedded in power and was practically managing politics in Peru.
And experts say Peru is still far behind in battling corruption. Journalist Augusto Álvarez Rodríguez says the country is in a complicated crossroad and that the testimony of Barata has confirmed information about former President Alan Garcia's links to Odebrecht.
We are far behind because we have already got maybe 4 years, at least 3 years of accusations that they are considering for trials that have started. But up to now, not one person has been convicted. No one has even been formally charged. There were only investigations. You also have to understand the other side, that of the prosecutors, which is that they are fighting very profound, very big corruption, so the country is experiencing a complicated moment at this crossroad.
During his interrogation at the Brazilian court, the former head of Odebrecht in Peru gave details on the contributions made to the political party of former President Alan Garcia in 2006. Barata said multi-million-dollar payoffs were given to Peruvian politicians, including a top aide of Garcia, who committed suicide last week as he was being arrested.
I cannot give specific answers, but he has answered all of the questions that have been asked about the money routes, and what I can clearly state is that the public prosecutor's hypothesis is being investigated.
Violence against women in Bolivia continues to be a pressing problem, with many cases unsolved. That's the story of Mamani Ramos, who was allegedly thrown off a bridge by her boyfriend in 2017. To this day, the case is on hold at court, and the alleged culprit remains free despite evidence. A bill against gender-based violence was passed in 2012, yet more than half of women in the country suffer from abuse by their partners.
They won't even show me the investigation file. They hide it. I don't know if his father wanted to clean everything out. It's an injustice for me.
The Dominican Republic is marking the anniversary of the revolution in 1965, which led to an invasion by the U.S. Our correspondent has the story.
The Dominican people are remembering the revolution of April 1965. It was a popular uprising against the government of the day that was only put down when U.S. Marines intervened.
54 years after that extraordinary event, we should feel proud of our Dominican and anti-imperialist history. Imperialism remains the main enemy of humanity.
After a coup d'etat against Juan Bosch, led by the army, supported by the church and organized by the U.S., the people rose up to defend democracy.
We sacrificed our lives to defend the Constitution and the legitimate government of Juan Bosch. We fought for his return, and that's why we found ourselves in a revolution and at war with the most powerful empire in the world, with the North American invasion.
A group of officers, including Colonel Francisco Alberto Camano, formed a joint civilian-military movement and overthrew the junta imposed by the coup. The United States immediately intervened, trampling on the right to self-determination and the country's sovereignty.
We will continue to confront them and defeat them everywhere. If they dare to mount another invasion and set foot on the homeland of Chavez and Simón Bolívar, we are ready to make them bite the dust of humiliation.
In spite of the U.S. invasion, the people's pride remained intact. From the depths of the masses emerged the demand for freedom, justice, and sovereignty. Yet now, 54 years later, many question a democratic system where the constitution is manipulated for electoral ends.
The revolution will triumph when the Constitution is respected, and there is a separation of powers as laid down in Article 2. There must be limits on power. Reflection should not be used to keep one group in power.
Washington saw the progressive governments of Juan Bosch and Camano as the threat of another Cuba in the Caribbean. That's why they did not hesitate to send 42,000 Marines to crush the revolution. But the Dominican people resisted with courage and gave birth to a national slogan, the Trench of Honor.
Trinidad and Tobago's police chief has fired back at his critics and the Media Association after his recent actions came under scrutiny. Grift has come under fire after his officers searched a radio station, reportedly without presenting a search warrant. Police had gone to Radio Jagriti to obtain recordings of statements made by the station's owner, which the police say was in contravention of sedition laws.
And if the media, Ms. Omati Leider and Mr. Paul Richards and others feel that the Commissioner of Police is being seen too much in the media, he loves the media, it is the media that contacts me. I get over 50 calls a day from the media. And now I am paying the price for being accessible to the media. So maybe I should Stephen Williams myself from now on. And I will lose all. So from now on, if the media has nothing to do with me, you don't hear from me, I have no comment to make, be careful what you ask for because you might get just that. So to Ms. Omati Leider and the others, you must think before you type. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, I thank you.
Well, members of the media, the Commissioner will not be entertaining any questions at this time, so this brings us to the end of today's media brief.
Several wildfires have broken out in Mexico's Chiapas and Oaxaca states. More than 900,000 hectares of pastures and forests have burned down so far. Firefighters continue to battle blazes both from the air and on the ground. According to the National Forest Commission, there are at least 11 active wildfires in the region. At least 1 million species could disappear in the next 10 years, according to a UN report. The report reveals that agriculture, deforestation, mining, and hunting are the main threats to biodiversity. It adds that 3/4 of land areas and half of the water resources are also affected. This is the first evaluation made on ecosystems in 15 years. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The government of Sri Lanka has lowered the death toll of the Easter bombings from 350. The minister damaged some bodies, made the identification of bodies a difficult task and a challenge for them to know the exact death toll. Rescue workers in South Africa have discovered more bodies of those killed by the recent floods. At least 60 people have been confirmed dead and over 1,000 were displaced by flooding and mudslides, which occurred mainly in the port city of Durban in KwaZulu-Natal province. President Cyril Ramaphosa visited affected communities and told survivors that he would ensure that all their needs are addressed.
We will give you as much support as we possibly can, and we will make sure that the needs that you have are addressed and that they are met at all our levels, provincial, local, as well as national level.
Bad weather has also proven fatal in Uganda, where at least 17 children and 1 adult have died after heavy rains battered the east of the country. The rains in the cold rainy seasons slides in 23rd by torrential over the country. In a final push to convince voters ahead of this Sunday's election, our correspondent in Madrid, Eduardo Marin, has more.
Our campaign here in Spain will last until tomorrow at midnight, spreading their message. Pablo Iglesias, the leader of Unidas Podemos, has traveled to Galicia, the north of Spain. The leader of the Socialist Party, Pedro Sánchez, is traveling between Andalucía and Barcelona is also the city where Albert Rivera, the leader of Ciudadanos, and Pablo Casado, the leader of el Partido Popular, has decided to travel today in order to spread their messages. Santiago Abascal, the leader of the right-wing party Vox, also is traveling and organizing political acts in Valencia. Tomorrow will be the last day of the campaign. On Saturday, no political acts are allowed by law the day before the elections. Meanwhile, all 36 million of Spaniards are waiting impatiently for the elections to be next Sunday.
We thank Eduardo for that report. An exhibition in Jerusalem is uncovering the similarities between living in the skins with veils belonging to Islam, Christianism, and Judaism are on display to show the resemblance of the three religions, photographed as the reciprocal influence between them. Filmmakers in Ecuador at the third Indigenous
filmmakers are showing their work at the 30 years of Indigenous cinema, even hoping a new national identity. Eliana Champutis is one of the organizers of this event, aimed at presenting Indigenous communities through different lenses.
The interpretation questionable top, but in these last 30 years, we have seen an evolution. We want to raise a political awareness in
including is Patricia Yayico of the Guaranca people, who describe the event as a party in support of the indigenous film industry.
We don't have to forget who we are, as it occurred with our parents who tried to hide that they were victims of violence. It's on us to accept.
Filmmakers say their work tells histories of love, the struggle for bilingual education, the problem in the Amazon, and sexuality. Patricia also points out
it has always been the women who have been much more passionate when it came to audiovisual projects. We do not rule out men, but if we have to go to a mobilization or do a casting, we fully
denounce that people are often excluded from the film. They say that there is a need for public policies to encourage the work of indigenous filmmakers. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Quito, Ecuador.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.